Hello and welcome to another episode of the Happy Head podcast. My name is Paul and I'm your host. And today I'm with Lauren. But before we introduce Lauren, I've just got to say something. It's just really funny because before I actually start talking, I go silent for about 30 seconds. I've got like a noise profile for when I clean the audio up later on. And I'm doing these funny counting things. So I've counted about 30 seconds and the look on my guests' faces go from like, what the hell is he doing? So like just mild ridiculousness. And it's just really, really funny. And you were kind of like desperately trying not to giggle, were you, Lauren?
Yeah, a little bit.
I know. It just looks a bit ridiculous. So how are you today?
I'm really well, thank you, Paul. How are you?
I am splendiferous. Thank you very much. I'm doing well. It's been a busy day, but I enjoy being busy.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So I'm down in Folkestone in Kent. Whereabouts are you again?
I'm in the beautiful Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, because you were telling me, weren't you, that Gloucestershire is the biggest county in the UK and it's got all kinds of amazing things.
Yeah, I believe so. It may be the UK, maybe England. I'm not entirely sure, but it is one of the biggest counties, and it's a bit of a funny shape. So where I am in the Forest of Dean, we're on the other side of the River Severn, so we're sort of tucked on the other side of most of the county, quite close to Wales. And yeah, it's just beautiful forests, absolutely stunning countryside. We've got wild boar and deer that roam the forests right near where we live. An interesting fact about the Forest of Dean is that sheep are allowed to roam the streets. So sheep have actually more rights on the roads than cars or people around here. So this is a beautiful time of year because we see all the lambs, just sort of scuttling by. It's really, really lovely.
That must cause a hell of a lot of road accidents if the sheep can just like wander around where they want.
Well, I think people mainly are quite aware. I've never actually heard of anyone hitting a sheep, fortunately. And obviously, if you do, you have to make sure you report it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've not actually heard of anyone who's hit one because yeah, if they're in the road, you just stop.
Wow.
They've got the rights.
Very bizarre. I can't see that being a thing in Folkestone, but then again, we don't get many sheep in
No.
Folkestone. How's this for a coincidence? In about 2 weeks, I'm interviewing a guy who lives also in Gloucestershire.
Gloucestershire.
That's the one. Yeah, there too. So, listen, Lauren, what brings you to the podcast? What we're going to be chatting about today? Your story, I hope.
Yeah. I'm really excited to be here to be able to share a little bit of my story, which really is about the sort of getting over limiting beliefs and starting my business and doing that when I actually was in the early stages of pregnancy. I started my business, so I'm really excited to be sharing that story with your listeners because I want to be able to inspire people to go out and follow their dreams and turn their dreams into reality in any way that works for them. And I'm really, really passionate about that. And I feel that my story helps demonstrate just that.
Fabulous. Well, go for it. I'm all ears, Lauren. Over to you.
Well, I think my story starts from, a couple of years ago, so sort of late 2018. Where I was working in a 12-month contract. That started in the September of 2018. And I was working this 12-month contract as a trainer. And I was going into GP surgeries and then doing communication training with reception teams, leadership training with the practice management teams, and I was having a really good time. This was using a lot of my managerial experience that I'd gained. It was using a lot of coaching. Didn't actually know it was called coaching then. I would have called it, effective conversations.
Of
But
course.
yeah, using a lot of coaching. And also something called NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And I had no idea what this was at all until I started doing this job. And what NLP is really is it's about how we speak to ourselves and how we communicate with other people. It's to do with our beliefs and our values and how that impacts all of our behavior. And of course, our behavior passes on to other people. People see that, and then their beliefs, their values, that impacts their behavior. And then we have obviously interactions. So that's where the leadership and the communication stuff that I was doing. And I was really enjoying it, but I was really aware this was a 12-month contract, and what was I going to do after that? And something I really wanted to do was start my own business. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And I think I didn't know what I wanted to do was because I actually didn't think I was good enough to start my own business. I really believed that that was the kind of thing other people do.
Mm-hmm.
Other people get to be really successful. Other people follow their dreams. And I just believed I would be always working for somebody else or, an organization. And that was just how it was. And I wasn't necessarily unhappy with that belief because I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was given the opportunity to study NLP at practitioner level. And that was in the January of 2019. So coming up to about halfway through this 12-month contract. And as part of that qualification, I also studied something called timeline therapy, which it's linked to NLP, it's linked to hypnosis. It's very much about how the mind and the power of the mind can help you release negativity and limiting beliefs. And so, I was like, yeah, I'll learn that. That sounds like very interesting stuff. And during this learning of it, I went through this process of timeline therapy and I released negative emotions, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. But I also released that low level limiting belief that was actually holding me back, that low level limiting belief of I'm not good enough. And from that moment, my whole world changed. I felt like physically, I felt different. I felt freer. And I felt like, oh, do you know what? I've got some more options here. There's different things that I could do. And that feeling of I'm not good enough to start a business, gone. Suddenly it was, okay, when am I starting my business? What am I going to call my business? What are the kind of people I'm going to work with? Oh, how do you build a website? What's company's house? All these things that I didn't even have a clue about. And so I started to explore them. And it wasn't a case of like, oh, if I could do it, it's when I'm doing it and I'm good enough to do it. Something else that was quite remarkable for me about that experience of timeline therapy was how it affected my relationship with food. Before that, up to that point, I'd suffered with an eating disorder. I'd been bulimic for about just over 20 years. That started when I was 11, and I'd had some good times, some really ill times with bulimia. And through going through the process of timeline therapy, that behaviour has completely stopped. Since January 2019, I haven't demonstrated the negative behaviours around food and the negative emotions around food.
Could you just take us, sorry to interrupt, could you just take us through what we mean by bulimia, what it is, how it affects people, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So bulimia is, probably people have heard of bulimia. It's a common eating disorder. And it's what the negative behaviours that often are demonstrated with someone suffering with bulimia is binge eating. So they will eat a lot in a short space of time, but they also do something known as purging. That can be through making themselves vomit, or through abuse of laxatives, or it could be, or a lot of time it's to do with addiction to exercise. And excessive exercise can be different behaviours that someone with bulimia might demonstrate. A lot of it is to do with control around food and a lot of guilt around food. It's not always to do with body image, though it can often be linked to body image and the desire to lose weight, but it's sometimes and more often more deeper than that.
So you were 11 when you first became bulimic.
Yeah.
What kind of cause? I know this sounds like a silly question, but 11-year-old girls, 11-year-old boys, living life, doing stuff, having fun. What do you know? What kind of brought it on that put you down that road of doing, the purging and all the rest of it?
Yeah, so I remember the first time I decided that I would purge and make myself sick. And that was when I was 11 and I was actually away on a school trip. And I was being teased at dinner time because we'd been out all day. I was really hungry, and I took an extra portion of food, and I was being teased for that. I got called overweight, I got called fat, I got called greedy, and that triggered something in that moment that made me choose. I made the decision at that moment that I would go and make myself sick that
Hmm.
evening, and I did. And then that behavior continued. It became a release rather than, it didn't become something that was bad in my world. It became something that I had to do. Although there is that wasn't, it wasn't just like lighting a match and that was the moment. You know, this kind of behavior is built up. So the need to control a situation. I was in a situation that I couldn't control, and so I found something that I could control, and that was a lead up to that moment.
Hmm.
For me and my bulimia that I experienced, it was to do with body image, but it isn't for everybody.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, because I've
Yeah.
heard of it, but I wasn't really sure. Kind of, I knew the kind of the links to body image, but I wasn't
Mm.
really aware of kind of other aspects. And when now you've explained it to me, the idea of having one thing to control, because you can't necessarily control being bullied or being teased, but
Mm-hmm.
you can control how you develop, build your relationship with food. So I get it now. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was totally, and it really stemmed from this limiting belief that I mentioned of
Hmm.
I'm not good enough,
Yeah.
and it was a negative behaviour of that, and like I said, I got rid of that limiting belief, and the negative behaviour around food stopped on that day, and I actually really remember going. We went out for a meal, all the trainees. We went out for a meal that evening, and when we'd finished eating, I got up and I went to the bathroom like I normally would. So I was sort of fulfilling the old prophecy of exactly the habits I used to do. And I went into the cubicle and I suddenly just said to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I am going to make a different choice in this moment. And I'm going to try on what life feels like making a different choice. And once I've tried it on, if I don't like it, I can go back. But that opportunity, that sense of clarity over my choices, I'd never experienced that before in this way.
Right. Yeah.
The behaviours before were very rigid. It wasn't a choice in my mind, and that feeling of choice. And I was like, I'm going to step out and I'm going to just try life on. Like I said, try life on without that behaviour. And so I did. And that was the first time I chose not to feel guilty for not purging and to not purge. And it was quite an eye opening experience that, actually, I'm okay. And I always see that as sort of my first step away from those negative behaviours. And every single day, it's over 2 years now since that day. Every single day since then is another step away. Every time I go, I'm not going to do that, is another step away. And of course, it's got easier and easier and easier to take those steps. There are times I don't even think about it anymore. It's certainly not part of my identity in the same way as it was back then. And I think that's why it can be so difficult with these kind of disorders to step away, because we do see it as part of our identity.
Hmm.
I talked about my bulimia, and actually, if you said I'm going to chop your arm off, I'd be like, no, you're not doing that. So actually, getting rid of something that was very much part of who I was for 20 years, that was a scary thing. But actually, it felt really safe in the process of timeline therapy. I always call it like my rucksack, and I put down that rucksack that I'd been gathering all that evidence for those limiting beliefs. I put it down, and like I said, stepped forward without it, knowing it was there if I really, really needed it. And so that was a really powerful moment in my life to experience and to make those choices. And that's a really obvious example of how those choices were laid out to me. I was really consciously aware of those choices. Some things, though, were much more unconscious that changed. So, like I said, I suddenly started planning this business idea. I started thinking of names for a business and, when am I going to do it? And all these kind of things. And, I was sort of doing that without really registering that a week before I thought I wasn't good enough to start a business. And that was a really wonderful moment. It's hindsight that makes me go, hold on, things really had shifted through that. And I was so excited. So I was thinking of names. I'd looked up Companies House, I'd looked up domain names and things like that, but I hadn't really set anything in stone. And because I was in this 12-month contract, I decided September's a really great time to start my business, finish this contract. That gives me loads of time to learn about all the kind of things that you need to learn as a business owner. Little did I know, you never stop learning as a business owner. So what was I thinking? But in my mind, I was like, yeah, it's going to be fine. I'll learn it all. And, I'd got rid of that limiting belief. I was good enough. So it was all going to happen and fine. About a month after, so this is in sort of February 2019, I discovered I was pregnant with my first child. My husband and I have been trying for a baby, so it wasn't a remarkable surprise, but it was obviously a wonderful news for us. But it did get me thinking, hold on, what about this business that, I'm planning? Baby's due in October, contract finishes in September. That gives me a month at 8 months, 9 months pregnant to start a business. Is this really ideal? And the answer that seemed very clear to me was no, not ideal at all. So when is the best time? And I thought, well, afterwards. I mean, I don't know anything about looking after a newborn baby, but I've seen, people say it's quite hard. I've seen I've seen films where people aren't getting any sleep, and people have told me that it can be quite hard work. So is that the best time to start a business? Or possibly not. So I thought, well, why not start now? And I went on to Google, because where else would you go for answers but Google? And I went on and I typed in starting a business when pregnant, and I was really shocked by the answers that I got, which were mainly, don't do it. You must be completely crazy to even consider this. It's too difficult. And there was definitely an implication that actually focusing on this at this point, now I was becoming a mother, would make me a bad mum. So I sort of took all this in, and I quit my job and started my business within a week of that Google search. And I really put down the sort of confidence to do that down to that moment of releasing my limiting belief of I'm not good enough. And like I said, with the example around the food, when I said, that was a really conscious awareness of my choices, whereas this was just an unconscious, this is what I do now kind of moment. It was like, well, of course, I'm going to start my business now. And if someone's telling me it's too difficult, I'm going to prove them otherwise. And just do it. And I'm going to make a success of it. And I also decided in that moment that I was going to write a book. And so when other women did the same Google search as me, because I was like, I might be unique, but I'm not so unique that I'm alone. When other women did the Google search that I did, I wanted to cut them to come up with something that was inspiring, that gave them permission, and that maybe gave them some tools to support them in that journey. And so I knew then I was going to write the book. I knew it was going to be called The Expecting Entrepreneur. And so I had to just get on with it then. I was like, it's either I need two things to write The Expecting Entrepreneur: a baby and a successful business. One is happening. There ain't no stopping this baby now. And successful business, well, the only thing that's going to stop me from that is me.
What did people say to you when you told them that you knew you were pregnant and you were quitting your job and you were going to start a business anyway and write a book? What was the kind of reaction from the people around you?
one of the most common things people said was, "Wow, you're brave." and, and I actually mentioned this in the book because that is intended as a compliment, and I completely took it as that. Whereas I also thought, well, hold on, what is it I'm supposed to be afraid of? And so I didn't actually feel brave because I didn't feel afraid. I felt, complete confidence that it was going to happen because I really truly believed in myself and what I was going to achieve. And I knew the book was going to happen. I knew the successful business was going to happen. I knew the baby was going to happen. So, yeah, I didn't actually feel brave, even though that's what most people thought I was.
So essentially, you'd gone through the kind of the NLP training and the timeline therapy, got rid of a load of stuff,
Yeah.
and just almost it's kind of like you're saying, I just felt unstoppable.
Yeah.
I could climb Mount Everest.
I got out of my own way.
Yeah, I could climb Mount Everest carrying a baby in one hand, a unicycle in the other hand, and something else on my back.
If I wanted to, I could. I don't want to.
What did you do? What was the actual kind of steps that you took? Obviously, you're pregnant. We all know how that happens and what we when a baby's born and everything. But with being pregnant and having the business and write a book, how did you kind of fit all that in that kind of time frame?
Yeah, well, I think one thing I felt really aware of, and I always do. Not Robin Hood. What's it called? Peter Pan, and he's
Peter
got
Pan, yeah.
Captain Hook is followed by that crocodile that swallowed the clock, and it's like tick tock, following him around. I felt a little bit like that, and the tick tock crocodile for me was this baby's coming in 9 months, and so I would like my business to be in a certain place before that happens. And that was a real motivator for me. I didn't feel that in any way like a sort of chain around my neck. And I can understand how some people might feel a bit like pressured by that. Mm-hmm. Personally, I didn't feel any pressure. I felt really motivated by that little crocodile. And so I knew what I wanted to achieve by a certain time. And I tried everything, in order to make it happen. So the biggest thing for me was about networking and talking to people, learning from people who had been in business a long time. I worked with a business coach who taught me about sales and sales funnels, which I didn't have a clue. I was just like, I'm really good at coaching. So there I go, I can help people. Didn't even consider anything to do with marketing and all that kind of stuff. But, that was part of the fun. And that is one of the reasons I love being an entrepreneur, is because every day is a learning day. And, there's always something like, oh, do you know what? I don't know anything about that. Or either someone else does and they can help me, or I can just pass it over to them, or there's a new opportunity to learn. I'm going to get really stuck in and learn all about it. And I find that really, really fascinating. And so, yeah, that was it, really. I just went for it. And I say I really went for it, but also with self-compassion. Self-compassion, I think, is one of the most important things as an entrepreneur, whether you're doing it pregnant or not, at any stage in your journey is so, so important, because I just don't think as a society we're kind enough to ourselves as much as we could be. We all make mistakes, but we can learn from them. We all have things that we get really excited about. We want them to go really, really well, and it doesn't quite pan out exactly as we wanted. That's okay. It doesn't reflect on me as a person when those things happened. And that, having that sort of self-belief, but also that self-compassion to go, okay, yeah, never mind. What would a really good friend say to me right now? Well, they'd probably say, good on you for giving it a really good go. And, should we explore, the other things that you could have done to do differently for next time, that kind of thing, rather than beating myself up. And I think that's really, really important and helped me on my journey.
I completely agree. Now, it's really good to have the self-belief and to know that your business is going to work, but there comes a time when it's the results that count, that kind of demonstrates you that you can do it. So how far kind of down the line were you when you kind of realize, you know what, this is working and I'm seeing the results, let's just move it forward?
Yeah. So for me, I had that sort of moment of I've made it in August 2019. So I was about 7 or 8 months pregnant at this stage, and I, looked at my business bank, and I was like, do you know what? This month I've turned over more money than I was ever earning before, and I can pay myself like one of the first rules I didn't know it at the beginning, but I wish I'd known it. And one of the first rules I sort of share with people I work with is in business, pay yourself. You're your biggest asset. So do pay yourself. But I realised in this August, so I'd been doing the business about 6 months at this point, and I was like, I can pay myself more money this month than I've ever been paid before working for anyone else. Plus, I'm doing it completely flexibly. My time. I get to choose how long a lunch break I get. And all these other awesome bonuses that you get with being an entrepreneur. I was 7 months pregnant, so I was like, I can take a nap. If I want to take a nap, I can go take a nap. And that's really awesome. And that was the moment I said, do you know what? I'm taking the time off. I blocked off the time. The baby was due at the end of October, and I decided, I'm going to take the whole of October off. I'm not going to work up right until sort of the very end of my pregnancy, which originally was, I'll work until I pop. But I was like, no, I'm going to take the whole of October off, and I'm going to really chill and enjoy like this process. And I also was like, obviously, I'm going to take all of November off, and then I can start to go back into work slowly. It might mean, I wasn't expecting to turn over the same amount of money in those months, because of how my business worked at the time. But I was like, but this month just shows me I can do it. This is the evidence. I'm going to take that bit of evidence. I'm going to put it in my new rucksack and carry that around with me, because at any point after the baby's born, there will be times that I feel, oh gosh, this is really hard. Can I do it? Am I good enough? There's my evidence. Yeah, absolutely, you can do it. You are good enough. You've done it before, you're going to do it again. And that was a really powerful moment for me.
You mentioned your book is called Expectant Entrepreneurs. Is that
Yes.
are those the people that you work with, or do you work with a kind of a broader range of people?
Yeah, I work with a broader range. So I tend to work mainly with women, female entrepreneurs. I do have a group for women who are pregnant or on maternity leave, who are starting or growing their businesses. That's very much just a community group on Facebook. And I don't really do like what I call the sort of work stuff in there. It's more just a space that, brings those two worlds together. Because quite often it can feel quite alone as an entrepreneur in the end anyway. But sometimes, but with that extra level of pregnancy, it just is really nice to have that community. But I've got my other group, which I call Lemonade, which is for female entrepreneurs, which is where I really sort of bring in all the tools of my trade and the mindset mastery kind of stuff. And yeah, I work with women to help them grow their businesses, but also that like sort of seeps out into growing as a person and growing in their lives as well.
I just find it phenomenal because, going through pregnancy, just that on its own is a challenge and a half. But, starting a business and growing a business to such a state that it's actually, and in 6 months as well, which must be record breaking, yeah, it is pretty phenomenal. What would you say to any woman that's kind of maybe coming to the end of a contract or thinking about quitting their job and actually wanting to start something? Maybe they are pregnant or they've got a toddler with them. What would you say to that person that's listening now?
So I would say, there is nothing you can't do if you really want to do it. Our potential as human beings is limitless. So, it's only us that actually tells ourselves we shouldn't be doing something. We think of pregnancy, like you said, it isn't the easiest thing to do, but we see it as this challenge, or we see it as hard, and therefore that is what the reality that we create. And that's how it works. But it also works on the other spectrum, where if we follow our dreams, we can turn those dreams into reality just as much. And so that's what I would say to anyone listening, that whatever you want, if you want it, you can make it happen. It starts with mindset. It all starts with mindset.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Where's the best place for people to find you, Lauren?
Well, my book, The Expecting Entrepreneur, is available on Amazon and all good online retailers. Best place to find me is in my group. So if we've got any women listening who would like to join Lemonade, it's Lemonade Mindset Mastery for Female Entrepreneurs, and that's a Facebook group. But I'm also on Instagram, Lauren Malone _EE.
Right, no need to memorize all that, but you do get bonus points if you can. I'll put all of those links in the show notes, both on YouTube and on the podcast section. Lauren, listen, it's been a pleasure. I think it's amazing to be able to say that you've actually done that and accomplished that, because it's no easy task. Well done, and thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity to have shared my story. I really, really appreciate your time. And I'm just sending out so much love and positivity to you and all your listeners. I think it's a really awesome thing.
Thank you, and speak to you very soon. Bye now.
Speak to you soon. Bye.